I opened the gates without a fight. I remember the moment vividly, how time seemed to pause as I made that fateful decision. The sound of the enemy's war horns filled the air, drowning out the cries of the terrified children hidden within the castle walls. The weight of my responsibilities bore down on me, pressing heavily on my conscience. I had to act, not as a soldier bound by the code of honor, but as a protector of the innocent lives entrusted to my care. I was terrified. The whispers of cowardice among my own men echoed in my mind. Yet I knew that surrender might be the only way to save the lives of those precious souls inside. I was thrust into the role of commander at a young age, the castle standing tall and proud against the backdrop of a kingdom in turmoil. It was a time of war, where alliances shifted like the tides, and honor could often lead to death. I had trained diligently, learning the art of war, preparing my men for the battles that lay ahead. But nothing could prepare me for the burden of that day. As I stood on the ramparts, gazing out at the approaching enemy forces, I couldn't help but notice the fear in my soldiers' eyes. They were seasoned warriors, but they were also fathers and brothers, and they cared deeply for the families we had sworn to protect. As the enemy's siege engines drew closer, the atmosphere in the castle grew tense. I could see the anxiety etched on the faces of the children peering through the narrow windows, and I knew they would not understand the gravity of our predicament. Their innocence was a precious commodity, and I was prepared to do whatever it took to keep them safe. The words of my advisors swirled in my mind, echoing the ancient codes of chivalry. Never surrender. Fight till the last breath. But what good was a battle fought to the death if it meant the slaughter of innocents? That unyielding code of honor stood in stark contrast to the desperate reality pressing in on us. The enemy did not seek a glorious combat. They thirsted for blood, for vengeance that would spill over and further stain the ground we stood upon. I had a choice to make. I could command my men to stand firm, uphold our honor, and prepare for a fight that would leave countless bodies in its wake. Or I could make a sacrificia trade, where my reputation would suffer, but lives would be saved. In the silence that followed, I felt a surge of resolve battle the grasp of fear. I rallied my closest advisors, presenting my thoughts, my fears, and my determination to fight for the lives of those inside rather than for my name. They were hesitant, shock etched across their brows as I voiced my plan to surrender. Honor is bound by the code a man lives and dies by, I explained, though I had no idea if any of them understood the urgency in my words. The answer I sought was not in their acceptance, but in the fire of my own conviction. As the enemy breached our gates, I went through a torrent of emotions, a mix of despair, relief, and an aching sense of inadequacy. I opened the gates willingly, and I knew that my men would curse me for it. But when I looked back at the scene unfolding within the walls, how the frightened children rushed forth to the safety of my arms, something shifted within me. The enemies poured into the castle, their eyes glinting with the thrill of triumph. Yet they hesitated as they witnessed the shame of defeat. So openly displayed the surrender of a commander out of love for those he was meant to protect. My heart plummeted as I anticipated the chaos that would follow. Chaos ensued. Soldiers shouted while the enemy scoured for spoils. I stood on the perimeter, just on the edge where chaos brewed and lightning flashed. I could sense judgment casting its shadow across the men that had laid down their weapons. Those honorable warriors now branding me a coward, for I had chosen mercy over valor. They didn't know the full story. nor would they care to hear it. I became the subject of whispered rumors and murmurs of betrayal, a man surrendering the very essence of chivalry for what was considered a coward's path. I couldn't shake the label. In those moments, it felt like my spirit had been stripped away, yet inside me blossomed a quiet resolve. I would rather stand as a so-called coward than bear witness to the slaughter of innocent children. As the dust settled, I embraced my new identity, the identity of a leader who would rather endure ridicule than compound the suffering of the defenseless. I gathered the children, speaking to them softly, ensuring they felt the warmth of safe arms around them. Their gratitude stunned me. Instead of anger, I saw joy, relief, and a glimmer of hope reflected in their wide eyes. They were children, innocent and free, and I had done my duty to protect them. It was then that I realized the honor in leadership may not always come from gallant charges into battle or the bravery of holding one's ground. True bravery exists in making the hard choices that shield others from harm, even when it means sacrificing one's own reputation in the eyes of the world. I could muster my courage not just for the clash of steel, but in the face of judgment, society's expectations, and the innate understanding that loyalty often extends beyond the battlefield. In the days that followed my decision to surrender, I experienced the humiliation of being labeled a coward, while I also witnessed dignity in the act of saving lives. Scholars and historians would argue for centuries over this precarious line between honor and shame. Old tales forgotten in the annals of history would bring my name, synonymous with cowardice, into the light of conversation. Yet, I persisted, reminding myself that in the vast tapestry of time, it would not be my reputation that mattered, but the lives that continued to thrive because I dared to defy the norm. No book would be written about my actions that day. The ballads sung by bards would not honor me as a hero, and my name wouldn't blaze across the pages of history. But children saved from the gallows would grow to tell the Talesa testament to a life lived beyond the confines of rigid honor. They would speak of a commander who chose to save lives instead of chasing glory. They would remember that courage is sometimes not found in defiance amid a storm, but in vulnerability, humility, and the heart's sincere desire to protect. As I looked across the courtyard to the children who now played free, laughter returning to their hearts, I understood one essential truth that transcended honor and glory. True courage is measured by actions rather than titles. This realization bore heavy on my heart as I took up my new life as a protector, one humble enough to understand that saving lives was the greatest honor I could aspire to attain. Remember this: history has a way of twisting narratives, but the truth lies deeper within the actions of those willing to bear the weight of their choices. It will be a world where tales of bravery aren't overshadowed by the noise of the sword, but by the whispers of the heart. If you find yourself questioning what true bravery means, look not to the battlefield, but to the choices made in the embrace of love and compassion. If you enjoyed this journey through the complexities of honor and valor, and you wish to continue exploring the hidden stories of our past, subscribe to Medieval Stories. Join us as we uncover more tales from history that challenge our perceptions and push the boundaries of courage. Your support helps us continue to share these incredible narratives. As time flowed forward, life within the castle continued, though the shadows of that day lingered. The scent of fresh bread and laughter filled the halls, though it could never fully erase the echoes of chaos. The town began to rebuild, the bonds of community strengthening as families came together to restore what had once been destroyed. Children's laughter became the sweetest melody. It reverberated in the stones of the castle. I found my place among the townsfolk, not as their leader, but as their neighbor who bore the scars of difficult decisions. Days turned into weeks, and amidst the rekindling of joy, I sought every opportunity to connect with the families I had saved. I shared their burdens, helped with their tasks, and listened to their stories. Instead of the shame that once clouded my heart, a profound satisfaction nested within me. I was a part of something greater, a living testament to what it meant to serve others far beyond the battlefield. The children, with their boundless enthusiasm, would often tug at my coat, eager to hear tales of bravery and magic. They wanted to know about knights in shimmering armor and enchanted creatures, but I told them tales of their own resilience. I spun stories of bravery seen in quiet moments, the courage it takes to climb a tree, to stand up for a friend, or to care for someone in need. It became clear to me that bravery could shine brightly in the smallest gestures. Yet, the memories of that day continued to haunt me. Quiet moments alone turned into vessels filled with reflection. I replayed the scene within my mind, the moment I opened the gates, how easy it might have been to take a different path. I fought against the riptide of regret, but often found myself drifting back into that sea of doubt. What if I had stood my ground? What if I could have defeated the enemy? Each what if was a reminder of my perceived failure, my inability to fulfill the traditional notion of a commander. It weighed on my soul, the questioning lingering like a heavy cloak. Gradually, whispers of my actions began to stir beyond the walls of our community. There was a growing realization among many that I had changed the course of fate not through the steel of my sword, but through the courage it took to break free of old beliefs. The discussions began to rise, debating what it truly meant to lead. More warriors emerged, willing to share their stories of choice over obligation, shaping the narrative into something greater than mere acts of war. Then came the day when a wandering bard entered our town, a traveler known for recounting tales of the past. As he set up in the square, people gathered around him in anticipation. His mesmerizing voice flowed through the air like a gentle breeze, and for the first time, he spoke of my actions. Recasting the narrative, my name was no longer a symbol of cowardice, but of compassion, a man who put lives before his own honor. As I stood apart from the crowd, a swell of emotion stirred in my chest. The tales of bravery I had shared with the children, the laughter and camaraderie of our village, began to intertwine with the truth of that tumultuous day. I had become more than just my moment of weakness. My surrender transformed into a legacy that mattered far more. The bard's tales reached far and wide, traveling to the ears of nobles, scholars, and peasants alike. A newfound respect blossomed for those misunderstood actions, with the growing notion that perhaps leading with kindness was an uncharted territory in honor's domain. The conversations fueled change, challenging the age-old ideologies that tied honor strictly to valiant warfare. It sparked a ripple effect, encouraging others to reflect upon their own definitions of bravery. One evening, sitting beside the fire, I cradled my favorite child in my arms, a young girl whose laughter had once been drowned in fear. She turned up to me, her innocent eyes bright. "Will you tell me a story?" she asked, her voice soft and filled with trust. In response, I looked deep into her eyes, and for the first time, I didn't share tales of gallant knights. Instead, I spoke of love, sacrifice, and the courage to make decisions not for glory, but for the safety of others. It was therein I found my voice, one that transcended the notion of a commander. As the months passed, my heart healed from the wounds of judgment, and the strength of community fortified me. Trust blossomed anew as I was often invited to share my reflections on leadership and bravery. I became not just a participant in my community, but an active contributor in reshaping our futures, rallying around the stories of those who dared to prioritize compassion over fear, seeking an afterglow of honor. And then, one day, I received a letter from the king himself, calling for a gathering of leaders from across the realm. It shocked me. I had expected to be greeted with scorn, condemned for my decision to surrender. Instead, the invitation hinted at a different narrative. I arrived to find a host of commanders, each of whom shared tales of their own battles against grim choices. As they recounted their journeys, I realized that everyone had grappling stories hidden beneath the surface of valor. In that gathering, I took a step forward, my heart galloping within my chest. I had a story to tell on where the courage to protect the innocent took precedence over the cries of war. I stood tall and spoke of that fateful day and the moment I chose to open the gates. To my surprise, as I shared the fullness of my heart, I saw nods of understanding, empathy reflected in the eyes of my peers. It became apparent that my story resonated not just with their troubles, but also with their truths. The king listened intently, and when the murmurs of agreement eased, he stepped forward, addressing the assembly. "Today, we witness a change in our understanding of courage," he proclaimed. "We are not bound to a singular narrative, and in our actions, we must learn the depth of compassion in leadership." His words broke the chains binding honor to the sword. The collective understanding opened a new page in our wisdom and notion that courage could be multifaceted, and perhaps surrender didn't equate to cowardice. Instead, it could reveal a higher purpose, the will to protect. I left that gathering feeling renewed and empowered, a quiet satisfaction filling the void once inhabited by regret. I hoped the story of that day would ripple across the kingdom, inspiring future generations to look beyond battles and instead embrace the moral truths embedded deep within their choices. As I returned to the castle, I promised myself that I would continue to spread these lessons, sharing courage in every corner, helping others find the bravery to stand not just in the light of glory, but in the shadows where compassion emerges. Those children whose lives I once saved had become a living testament of all that had transpired. I watched as they grew, embodying compassion and resilience while gathered in circles, altering their pathways to embrace every facet of bravery, becoming torchbearers of a newfound legacy, one that could illuminate even the darkest corners of history. If these reflections resonate with you, if you sense the call to delve deeper into the stories that shape our understanding of honor and leadership, then subscribe to Medieval Stories. Embrace the narratives that redefine what it means to be courageous in a world where honor is often misunderstood. Join us as we continue to journey through the pages of history, uncovering tales that ignite empathy and foster change. Together, we can grow a legacy that honors compassion as much as valor. As the seasons continued to sway gracefully, I became engulfed in the daily rhythm of life, the laughter of children, the industrious buzz of trades, and the vibrant celebrations of festivals that stitched the fabric of our community together. Each moment felt like a reflection of our collective strength, a testament to the lives saved and the bonds formed in the wake of a life-altering choice. I spent many afternoons sharing my stories with the children in the courtyard. Their wide-eyed wonder lit each tale, and they often gathered eagerly around me, their youthful spirits buoying my heart. I told them of knights and dragons, but equally, I spun yarns of those I had met, people who displayed incredible courage in the mundanity of everyday life. They learned to see that valor wasn't only forged in the heat of battle, but often emerged in the most unexpected moments, such as when someone chose to side with kindness over vengeance. One crisp autumn evening, as the golden leaves danced in the wind, I organized a festival dedicated to courage and compassion. It was a vibrant celebration where children, families, and neighbors came together, intertwining tales of bravery through art and performance. Children dressed as noble knights, unveiling scripts and acts that intertwined moments of valor with acts of empathy. Their performances beckoned to the audience, igniting a renewed understanding of courage in unimaginable forms. Through the festivities, we honored those who had fallen in battle, while also remembering those who made small yet significant choices to elevate one another above the fray. This festival became an annual tradition, a reminder that strength and bravery come in many forms, and that the essence of leadership involves the willingness to choose empathy despite the prevailing winds of pride and honor. However, it wasn't just within our community that my ideas began to penetrate. Over time, news of our gatherings and the nuances of bravery we celebrated spread to neighboring regions. Leaders from distant lands began to take notice, curious about this reconceptualization of chivalry. Many sought to witness the spirit of our community firsthand and the transformation that had taken root after a single moment of decision. One such visitor was Lady Elara, a respected commander from a nearby barony known for her ferocity and valor on the battlefield. When she arrived, her reputation preceded her, a fearsome warrior who had faced countless foes and emerged triumphant. But upon meeting her, I could sense a weariness behind her commanding presence. An invitation for vulnerability cloaked beneath layers of hardened steel. As we spent time together, I shared my journey, the events that unfolded that fateful day, the lessons nurtured in the aftermath, and the blossoming appreciation for alternative forms of courage. Each word seemed to resonate, healing a crack in her armor that even she had not anticipated. She spoke of her struggles, the weight of the traditional code of chivalry, and the unrelenting pressure to uphold a reputation carved in blood and steel. Over the course of that week, as Lady Elara watched our festival unfold, she began to open up about the burdens she carried, the men who had perished under her command in battles fought for honor, and the countless times she had turned a blind eye to those in need, choosing instead to forge ahead in the pursuit of glory. By the time she departed, she did so with a new perspective on leadership, on where compassion could coexist alongside valor. The influence of our festival grew year after year, luring leaders and communities eager to redefine the very essence of courage. Roundtables were established, and I would often find myself a part of conversations that flourished around empathy, the balance of power, and the unseen battles that anyone could face in their daily lives. I listened intently as others shared their stories, and with each narrative voiced, our bonds of understanding grew stronger. One evening, as I drifted towards a soft slumber, I felt I was being visited by the memories of the children I had encountered during the darkest days in the castle. I held on to thoughts about how they had grown under the watchful light of compassion. I recalled the young girl who had tugged on my coat, seeking stories that would lift her spirit, She was now blossoming into a young Womana leader within her own right, inspiring her peers and sharing the inherent strength found in selfless acts. It was not long after that an important day arrived, the day of the first Inter-Community Leaders' Council. Leaders from numerous towns gathered to discuss a shared commitment to merge bravery with empathy, laying the groundwork for a new alliance rooted in kindness. The opening ceremony was filled with warmth, a celebration of collaboration that blurred the lines between rivalry and camaraderie. I stood before these leaders, sharing the metamorphosis of my own journey and the profound significance I found in our shared purpose. I spoke passionately about the need to transform our perceptions of valor, urging them to join not for the sake of power, but to foster a community that recognized every action as a form of courage. My friends, I proclaimed, the weight of my words hanging heavily in the air, let us redirect the narratives handed down through time. Let valor be redefined not as conquering one another, but as lifting each other up. In our stories, let bravery give birth to compassion, where every heart can find a voice and every child can grow without fear. A palpable energy resonated through the crowd, a wave of unity pooling within the hearts of leaders who had once viewed each other as mere rivals. That night marked the creation of a new alliance, steeped in the notion that true progress springs from pooled compassion. By the end of the gathering, we resolved to protect not only our territories, but our communities, forging a blueprint for the future. The ripples of that decision continued to weave through the tapestry of our lives, and I watched as the children I had once sheltered grew into architects of a movement each. Embrace. Each act of simple kindness turned into the bedrock of their leadership. They said, if a commander could choose mercy over honor, then so can we. If courage is a matter of choice, we will shape our stories with the intention of love. Together, we blossomed into a network of communities, bonded by purpose, recognizing that strength lies not in the steel of swords, but in the hearts willing to wield compassion. As we stood, hand in hand, those of differing backgrounds and beliefs, our voices melded into a chorus of possibility. In time, dust collected on every sword that once glimmered in the midst of heated conflict, and the tales of our past battles faded into the backdrop of a new chapter, a chapter rich with healing, understanding, and profound acceptance. I reflected on my journey, how a single moment had dismantled the chains of obligation and birthed a movement that extolled the virtues of courage and connection. If you are inspired by this journey, a blend of intimacy and valor, a coexistence of leadership and love, consider subscribing to Medieval Stories. Let's continue to explore the threads of history, unraveling the deeper narratives that tell of human connection and understanding. Together, we will weave the stories that celebrate courage in all its forms, illuminating what it truly means to rise, lead, and protect one another. Join us as we write the next chapter of compassion and bravery in our shared human story. With the dawn of each new season, the fruits of our unity blossomed into something profound. The alliance forged in that pivotal gathering rippled outward, encouraging neighboring communities to join us in a collective commitment to sowing seeds of empathy. We established educational programs that placed emphasis not just on military might, but on the virtues of compassion, understanding, and cooperation. Stories of our accomplishments traveled beyond the horizons, inspiring other lands to reconsider their ways of life. Our festival evolved from a local celebration into an event that drew visitors from distant realms who came in search of wisdom, eager to witness the manifestation of courageous compassion. The children of our towns took to the stage, sharing their interpretations of knightly tales through diverse mediums, dance, theater, and art. Each performance became a canvas, illustrating how courage could be taken from the battlefield to the embrace of the family and community. The young girl I had once cradled became a central figure in our festivals. Her spirit bright, her voice strong, she took the lead in crafting narratives that taught the value of empathy, recounting stories of kindness that extended beyond traditional valor. Through her words, she positioned compassion as a transformative force, necessary for any true hero. Villagers from all walks of life gathered to listen, finding themselves captivated by her mesmerizing performances. As the years progressed, I witnessed an incredible transformation in our community. Old rivalries that once pitted towns against one another began to fade as new bonds forged in camaraderie emerged. Villagers set aside their fears and prejudices, embracing differences as points of pride rather than sources of division. We turned our gaze towards the future, filled with hope for our children's journey, a future where conflicts could be addressed through dialogue rather than bloodshed. Yet, in the heart of this blossoming community, I never forgot the lessons of the past particularly. The moment I had opened those gates, I would often return to the ramparts of the castle, reflecting on the gravity of that day. The rusted latch on the gate now stood as a quiet symbol of both my uncertainty and the unexpected strength I had discovered within me. The winds whispered stories both familiar and challenging, a reminder of the held grudges that still lingered, of the hearts that needed healing. One fateful evening, an unexpected figure arrived at my doorstep. It was the commander of the enemy, who had once laid siege to our castle. His name was Lord Cedric, a man marked by the same intensity that once drove him to war. His tone was heavy and monotonous as he sought my audience, seeking dialogue not to reignite old wounds, but to seek forgiveness. I refused to carry the weight of my past any longer, he confessed, his voice trembling under the burden of vulnerability. I wish to understand how you were able to embrace an outcome that was foreign to men like me. Your choice ignited a narrative that has changed lives, and I wish to bear witness not as an enemy, but as someone who needs to atone for past actions. Though our histories were tainted by conflict, I sensed an earnestness in his plea. I invited him into my home, where we shared a humble meal together, a tapestry of flavors once unthinkable between our factions. As we broke bread, we delved into the depths of our respective journeys, the struggles we had faced, and the lessons learned amidst the wreckage of lives broken by disdain. With each shared story, we began to dismantle the barriers of our past, tracing the roots of conflict back to fear and misunderstanding. I gradually understood that it was not just my surrender that had shifted the course of change. It was also Lord Cedric's willingness to put aside pride. In seeking forgiveness, he demonstrated an extraordinary bravery, the courage to reflect, repent, and rebuild. After our evening of conversation, an audacious idea ignited within me. I proposed an initiative, a collaborative effort where our communities could be brought together, transforming former enemies into allies. This new alliance would aim to bridge gaps, ensuring historical grievances were acknowledged while carving a path towards genuine reconciliation. Together, We traveled to our respective communities to share our visions of a renewed future where healing could take precedence over retribution and dialogue could emerge from discord. Many were apprehensive, casting wary glances at the leader who had once seen them as foes. Yet, through our joint efforts, we showcased the power of understanding to heal wounds too long festering. The idea began to take root. We organized a summit, bringing leaders and villagers from both sides to engage in open dialogue, fostering transparency of grievances that had long gone unspoken. It was no simple task. Temptation lingered to revert to old hostilities. Yet, in our shared commitment to uncover the truths of the past, many began to challenge their perceptions, revealing layers of empathy that even they had not known existed. We explored the profound stories shared by both sides, giving voice to the individuals whose lives had been impacted by the conflict. As stories unfolded, tears flowed freely and hearts began to mend. Old wounds transformed into shared scars, living testaments to the battles once fought fiercely. We began to formulate plans to unite our resources, revive the economy, and prioritize education-creating programs designed to acknowledge, understand, and embrace our differences rather than allow them to divide us. In time, we witnessed tangible change. The children of our communities embraced each other, bridging divides that once seemed insurmountable. The laughter of children echoed loud, infusing joy into spaces once burdened by sorrow. Old battlegrounds turned into gathering places for feasts of unity, where neighbors set aside their fears and celebrated their shared humanity. This new legacy, woven together from strands of empathy, courage, and understanding, began to flourish across lands. It nurtured underlying values that celebrated compassion and prioritized the collective progression of community over individual ambition. Bolstered by our commitment to shared growth, allies emerged amidst the shadows of history, illuminating a future that shimmered with hope. As I stood at the helm of these burgeoning alliances, I reveled in the understanding that what began as a single act of courage had the potential to cascade into something monumental. The power of storytelling became a medium for transformation, where each voice could uplift and heal the fissures of past grievances, gradually crafting an alternative narrative, one that stood resolute in its belief that compassion could conquer discord. We continued our work, planting seeds of empathy in the hearts of generations yet unborn, fostering a belief that unity was attainable. It was a cause that transcended individual triumphs, grounding itself in a shared mission to persevere. As I savored these moments, I realized how vital it was for us to remain connected. Our stories and experiences would carry forward the voice of humanity in an ever-chaotic world. It was a testament to the truth that we could all reshape our legacies not within the realm of swords and shields, but in the embrace of compassion and understanding. If you are inspired by these tales of transformation and hope, subscribe to Medieval Stories. Join us as we embark on journeys that unveil the narratives of courage, compassion, and connection. Together, we will continue to discover how stories shaped the past and how those same stories can guide us toward a brighter future. Together, we can reframe what it means to be courageous.